Yes, it is very significant, and uh, it shows that the relationship that started in January this year, when President Trump resumed his second term, that relationship is gradually moving ahead. We saw President Trump mentioning Pakistan in his address his address to a joint session of the U.S. Congress. Then we saw U.S. and Pakistani delegations visiting each other's capitals, and then uh, the army chief came and he had an unprecedented lunch with President Trump at, at the White House. Unprecedented because the U.S. president does not usually invite army chiefs to such lunches or dinners. It is such honors are usually reserved for visiting head of state, heads of state or head of government, not for the army chief. So that was unprecedented. And then we started hearing about a possible meeting between the prime minister and President Trump. And when these reports started circulating, there were many skeptics in Pakistan and abroad. They were saying that okay, it is the army that caused the shots in Pakistan, and when President Trump has already spoken to the army, then why is the need for him to meet the Pakistani Prime Minister? But then we saw it happening today. It is very significant. It is, I think, I've been here for 20 plus years, and this is the first time I saw Pakistan being invited to the White House twice in a year. I mean, in May it was the army chief who went and met President Trump, and then we again today we had the Pakistani Prime Minister, and it is also unprecedented that a foreign dignitary comes to New York for attending the UNGA, and then he is invited over to Washington, and despite his very busy schedule. He met the Turkish president Erdogan today. I mean, President Trump did at the White House, and they were. I went through the daily schedule of the president is published in America, and I went through his schedule. It was a very tight schedule, but then he found time for Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, and not only that, before the meeting started, he spoke to the US media. That was on a variety of issues, mostly domestic. But he also, while the question was not about Pakistan, but President Trump made it a point to mention Pakistan. That was like when he was asked about President Putin and his failure to end the war in Ukraine. He said he was very appointed with President Putin and he expected that he would support his move to end the war. And but and then while talking about Ukraine, he mentioned that he had actually contributed to preventing seven wars uh, in the world, which could have gone very wrong. And then and then he mentioned Pakistan, which was in reference to the war between India and Pakistan, the 4-day war earlier this year. And then he said that the Pakistani Prime Minister and the Field Marshal, he didn't take the full name of Field Marshal Asim Munir and said the Pakistani Prime Minister and the Field Marshal were here. And he said the Field Marshal is a very great leader, and the Pakistani Prime Minister is also a great leader, and they are here. They're here. I'm here to confirm that the meeting is happening in the Oval Office, which is a big honor, and so they are waiting for me. And then after the news conference, we went straight to the Oval Office. Actually, the news conference caused a little delay in the meeting, but it did happen. And we saw, besides other things, President Trump taking them around. So this meeting, I mean, it was not only important, but the duration of the meeting also showed that it was not one of those meetings where the U.S. president brings leaders a meet and greet type thing where you have tea and then you go home. But it continued for well over an hour, and there were only two people from the Pakistani side who participated in the meeting: the army chief and Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif. And the army chief's presence indicates that the meeting focused on security issues as well. And the most pressing security issue these days is that of Gaza and the Palestinian question. As you know, that earlier this week, President Trump hosted a summit meeting of eight Muslim leaders from Pakistan, from Turkey, from Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, and and Indonesia. And during this meeting, he discussed the possibility of uh, forming peacekeeping force under the supervision of the United Nations, and this force will include troops from Muslim countries, including Pakistan, but Pakistan will also have a greater role, greater than just contributing troops. Indonesia even agreed to contribute troops, so did Turkey and others, and both the Turkish and Indonesian Prime Minister, after talking to the media after the meeting, said that the proposals that President Trump discussed in that meeting, if implemented, they can bring peace to the Middle East. So we can see that it is a very serious move, and the fact that he invited the Pakistani Prime Minister to the White House to discuss this another issue shows that is Pakistan's influence is slowly but gradually increasing. But this meeting was not just important for our region or for South Asia, but it also covered the Middle East, because Pakistan is now being recognized in Washington that Pakistan can not only bring stability to South Asia, but it can also play a role in the Middle East. So uh, the army chief, as I said, his presence showed that security issues. The focus was on security issues, and there's been no formal statement after the meeting, but it just ended. So we are all hoping that there will be some sort of joint statement or some declaration or something highlighting what happened in the meeting. But we had been told before the meeting that it will, the issues that will be discussed in the meeting included, of course, the situation in the Middle East, the situation in Afghanistan. President Trump, in that same uh, briefing in which he talked about the Pakistani Prime Minister, also mentioned Afghanistan and his desire to regain the Bagram Air Force base. And he said that he has discussed this issue with the Taliban. The American side has discussed this issue with the Taliban. That means that is also a serious issue that directly concerns Pakistan. So that must have been discussed. So, and then, of course, trade and economic relations between Pakistan and the United States. Like yesterday, we had a briefing by a senior State Department official in New York who did say that the United States is already investing millions in finding precious minerals in Pakistan, and also is willing to invest in exploring gas fields, petroleum in Pakistan. So of course, our economic relationship, our trade relations, strategic importance is growing up. But at yesterday's briefing, Americans made it the U.S. official made it very clear that our relations with Pakistan is separate from our relations with India. That one relationship does not minus the other relationship. That we want good relations with both the countries. And India has its own importance. Pakistan has its own importance, and this is what Pakistan always wanted. But Pakistan did not want an exclusive relationship, because that has both its pros and cons. Pakistan wants to maintain a relationship with a strong relationship with the United States, but it also wants to maintain its very strong relationship with China. And I think there is a realization in Washington too So there is no pressure on Pakistan for ending its ties with China or just building an exclusive relationship with Pakistan. I think Pakistani policies, Pakistan diplomacy is being appreciated in Washington once more, and I hope this meeting leads to a better understanding of Pakistan's position in Washington and uh, um, measured improvement in bilateral relations.